Welcome, everyone. As you enter, we're inviting you to put into the chat a couple of words about how you feel when you're in a group or family conversation and you know that you're the political minority. What's that like for you? Put a couple words into chat. I'm going to read off some of these here. All right. Curious, discomfort, uncertain of what to say, on edge, tense and cautious, intimidated, guarded, it rarely happens, irritable, challenged and silenced, flustered, outcast. Okay, let's go then. All right, well, welcome everyone to Navigating Tense Group Conversations Across the Political Divide. I'm Mary Beth Stibbons, director of our National Event Organizer team, and we're delighted to have you with us today. Most of our Braver Angels workshops focus on one-to-one conversations, listening deeply, acknowledging the other person, pivoting, sharing your own perspective, and finding some common ground where it exists. This session today goes another step to help you navigate group conversations where you find yourself in the political minority, a scenario that often arises during this time of year. In this unique program, Braver Angels co-founder and family therapist, Dr. Bill Doherty, will share strategies and practical skills for handling tense group conversations. Whether you felt outnumbered, misunderstood, or like the lone voice in the room, this session will equip you with tools to navigate those moments with clarity and grace. Before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. There will be time for questions and answers at the end, and this event is being recorded. So no need to capture every word, just immerse yourself in the session. And as we reflect on the past year and look ahead to the next, let's commit to bridging divides and building stronger connections. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
All right, so good to see everybody. We decided to make this 1 hour because this is a very busy season. Glad you're here. So we'll try to do this efficiently and hopefully it'll be of use. I'm particularly excited about doing this presentation because this is new material. Like I said, our skills are mostly the one-to-one conversations or one to a very small group. But some of the most difficult situations we're in or when we are in a minority in a group, particularly a family, but it could be a work group or a social group as well. So to plunge ahead, context is where and when does this material apply? A family gathering, a work or social group in which you are in the political minority. So that's what we're talking about, managing these sorts of group situations. Our goals today, knowing how to manage your emotions in a group of political others, some skills for avoiding negative interactions in a group, and skills for navigating interactions you choose to have in a group. So this second one will be about how to avoid, how to not have actually any interactions if you think it's going to be negative, and then we'll talk about what you can do if you choose to engage. So strategy one is that I suggest generally it's best to avoid political conversations when you're outnumbered. You can obviously choose otherwise, but it's often a good idea to just not engage. So why? Well, you can't influence group dynamics as you might one-to-one communications. One-to-one, somebody gets agitated, you can help soothe them, you can, lots you can do. But in a group, people in groups are then more reactive than they are individually. We all know this. Emotional contagion takes hold. And it's often the most anxious or angry person in the group who brings it down. And so you may be having a pretty decent conversation, going back and forth with one person, others are listening in, and then bang, somebody launches and it just spreads. Now, family groups in particular can be difficult because there's a history. There's differential loyalties that people have. If you're the odd person out, you may be seen as less loyal to the rest of the family and its legacy than others. And people are very hard to change roles. And we have a whole workshop, of course, on family dynamics of political conversation. But even that workshop is more about how do you navigate one-to-one conversations, say with the family gladiator or the family defender or something like that. So this is about the group, and it's more difficult, which is often why it's best to not get into it. And there may be another person, politically similar person in the group, and you may think, well, that's helpful. Well, it very well may not be, because you may be trying to use your best braver angel skills, and the other person goes on the attack or gets very defensive, and then the reactions that people have to that person carry over to you. So some skills to think about when you are listening in. Okay, so a lot of people get into distress just listening in. They're not actually engaging in the conversation. So here's some thoughts. When others are talking, you're in the political minority and you're troubled by what they're saying to each other, but they're not engaging you. Breathe. Keep breathing. Remember to breathe. This will help your stress. The second is try for a neutral affect if you can. As if they're discussing an uninteresting topic. Suppose you're not into sports and the whole thing is about sports. And so how would you feel then? Well, just sort of go on neutral if you can manage that. Or try a curious stance. Imagine you're an anthropologist who is there observing a group of people, and ask yourself, can I listen and learn something here? For those of you who've done our red blue workshops where we have fish bowls, where there's a group of like-minded people in a circle with people on the other side listening in, and then they switch sides. It's a very valuable exercise because you're not engaging with the people in the middle. You're listening to them. And you can take on a curious stance. Another thing you can do is look for an opening to change the subject. And so I'm from Minnesota here, and you might say, hey, is anybody going to watch the Vikings-Packer game tonight? Okay. You can see if you could change the subject. You can also engage one person sitting near you. If it's a fairly large group, it's pretty common for people to break off into pairs. So you could turn to the person sitting next to you and say, how are your kids doing? Okay, so there's a conversation going on and you are extracting yourself, but you're still present by engaging one person. And then the last one here is that you can quietly leave the space without comment or negative nonverbals. If it's a meal, you can, and some people are finished there, you can start to gather some plates. You can, people are always leaving groups to go to the bathroom or something, right? So you can quietly extricate yourself when you're really finished listening. But I encourage you to try, it would be a deliberate effort to see if you can stay and be neutral or even curious without engaging. Now, what if somebody in the group tries to bait you into a conversation you don't want? So what are some skills there? And a direct approach is to say, let's not go there right now, Stan. Cindy, some of the examples I'm using a name because it makes it a little more personal. So you say, Stan, I just as soon not go there. That's the direct approach. Sorry, Peggy. That's a question I'm not going to answer, get into right now. To say, I'd rather eat this great dessert right now than get into that issue. That's the direct approach. Sometimes an indirect approach is also useful with some humor. So I remember a family gathering when somebody just out of the blue just made this big pronouncement. And I said, whoa, nice one. Okay, good try. I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to pick it up. Okay. Or somebody sometimes will ask a question to you, or and they actually are not interested in your answer. They are interested in giving a speech. Okay, and they're asking you a question so that you can give them the opening to give the speech. So you could say, so Uncle George, sounds like you have something to say on that. Go for it. Okay, and then the last one there is that You could say something like, that's a great question. Maybe somebody else would like to answer it. Big thing to keep in mind is if somebody asks you a question and you are in the political minority and they know that and everybody in the room knows that, unless it's a very open, curious question, which is kind of rare in groups, frankly, the chances are there's a hook in there. You do not have to answer the question. And what I'm saying is if you answer the question, you can choose to, but if you do and it goes badly, you just invited it, okay? By answering a question that you felt pulled into, and nobody can make you answer a question and get into a conversation. So there's some ways to either directly or indirectly pass on getting into a conversation where maybe history has taught you this does not go well. And then lastly, if you're still pressed, if somebody or some group wants to keep, hey, again, we want to hear, blah, 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 and you don't want to go there, then there's some Braver Angels exit skills that we teach in our workshops and that I'm going to cover later. You can exit the conversation. So this is about having good boundaries in groups, particularly if some people in the group are wanting, I'm not saying for malicious reasons, but they are aware that you're not with them, and they are wanting to have some sort of argument with you that you don't want to have. What I'm saying is you can protect your boundaries without getting antagonistic. So if you do decide to engage, so the rest of this is going to be, you decided you want to engage in a group conversation. Key thing is to not do the most common things that people do, and that is get defensive. That's not what I'm saying. Counterattacking. I can't believe that you all support so-and-so. Or being instructive, which is let me explain the facts to you. Sort of rising above, and particularly in a family group, people are going to really, really dislike anybody in the family who pretends that they are the smartest one and that they're going to instruct everybody. So if you're going to engage, those are the things to avoid. And if those happen, and we all can make those mistakes, I certainly have, there's nobody, perfect in this. What I'm saying is if you end up being defensive or counterattacking and instructive, and then it doesn't go well, and then later on you're processing it and thinking about it, don't put all the responsibility on your family members or your coworkers or the social group, because if I do that, I played a role, okay? And so part of what I can learn from it is how to next time bring a better self to the conversation. So instead, if you do want to engage, this is sort of the larger strategy, is to define yourself politically without telling somebody else they should change. So this is part of the heart of the Brave Angels approach. This is my view, okay? This is my story. This is how I came to this view, or this is the experience I had. And to let go of the wish, the hope, I guess you can have a hope, but an expectation. Let go of the expectation that anyone in the group is going to agree with you or be curious. So I hope you're with me on that a lot of times when we choose to get into a conversation in a group where just about everybody else disagrees, it's with the expectation that somebody is going to say, oh, that's a really good point, Bill. I hadn't thought about that before. It's not likely, particularly in a group. It may one-on-one, because part of what can happen if somebody says they agree with you on something or acts really curious, or heaven forbid would paraphrase what you say, they may feel that they are on the outs with the rest of the group. Okay, so groups have this sort of sense of, we're the right and the righteous, and so somebody who in an individual conversation might agree with something, it would take a lot of courage. Now, some people do it. I don't want to overgeneralize, but it's best to let go of the expectation that if I say, here's where I am, here's the story behind it, that it's going to somehow influence anybody in the group. So if you decide to speak up, and these are the classic Braver Angel skills, do it with I statements, not you statements. So on my end, I see it this way, okay? Versus you people are saying, okay? I statements don't characterize the beliefs of somebody else. Unless they've just said it, don't say, this is what you guys are really saying. Be brief, don't give a speech. Read the group about whether people are listening, whether they're ignoring you, or whether they're getting agitated, and use that as a guide to whether you keep going and how you keep going. So read the group. Again, that's hard to do if you're feeling anxious and frustrated and not breathing well. And that's why I say, give yourself permission to not try this. And so here are a couple of other tips. You can acknowledge that you're the minority in the group. You can say things like, I realize I'm the odd one out on that last election. You could try some self-effacing humor if you can't pull it off, if you can pull it off without sarcasm. You can say, so speaking as the bleeding heart liberal or the heartless conservative or the speaking as the only Trump lover or Trump hater or whatever in the room, and then say, now you have to, if you're going to do either of these last two bullets, the I'm the odd person out or the I'm the you would have to, with humor, kind of exaggerate it. Even I'm the cult following Trumper in the room, and so I'll speak from that, or just I'm the big government liberal in the room. There is a way in which a comment, a non-antagonistic, descriptive, or even humorous, playing into stereotype, a comment has a way of lowering the tension level and making people less apt to jump on you. The first one, the number 4 bullet, is the simplest way to do it. So I know that I may be the only one, such and such, and coming from that position, here's what I have to say. And the last one is trying to do it with humor, but I want to emphasize that you have to be kind of emotionally self-regulated and you can't be sarcastic. If you and what that does is, and there's some research on this in social psychology of groups, that the person who is in the minority, if they quietly acknowledge that, and they acknowledge they have a minority voice that others may not agree with, it actually softens the interaction. And ironically, it makes people listen more. So more about if you decide to speak up. And we'll be going to questions before long on this. I wanted to make sure, even if we have an hour, we have plenty of time for questions. So if you're met with some degree of openness, you can use the brave range of skills that you've learned. And it's particularly useful to find something to agree with. The agreement skill is a really priceless one, because it lowers defenses. And if you've taken our skills courses and we talk about listening and acknowledging and so on, it's hard to acknowledge, use your paraphrasing. I think this is what you're saying. It's hard to come out with that in a group because there might be a whole number of people saying somewhat different things. And so the paraphrasing, acknowledging skill is really much more for a one-to-one relationship. But if you're listening in a group conversation and the group consensus is going in a certain direction, and there's something you could agree with, you could lead with that. So let's imagine you're in a family group or a work group, some kind of group where they're talking about immigration, and you don't like where they're going with it. However, if you choose to get in, again, I keep saying, if you choose to engage, you could begin with, I'm with anybody who says that our immigration system is broken and that we need to do such and such. Okay. Um, it's something to agree with tends to diffuse people. And it's easier to use that than some of our other skills that are more one-to-one skills. So here's a tricky one, this next one. There's a tone in the conversation that is troubling you. And you're feeling like if you don't say something, you're kind of maybe you're seen as condoning some um, negativity, some stereotyping, some nastiness. Um, and so one of the things you could do, again, and this is the bullet about objecting to the tone of a conversation, you could note your dissent without attacking. So I just want to say that not everyone around this table sees this issue or this group of people that way. I've done that in some groups where I'm not asking everybody, I'm not asking them to apologize. I'm not attacking them. I'm not saying I think this is, this is bigoted or off the wall or whatever, or, just whatever I'm objecting to. I'm not remembering a specific example at the moment. Um, but just I could say no, just for the record, not everybody here agrees with what Uncle Charlie just said. Okay, or what you just said, Charlie. And then stop. Stop. Because the idea here is to note your dissent, to make it clear that you're not going along with how the group is going, but it's not a hand grenade. It's not the, do you all hear what you're saying? But it's if saying nothing is feels compromising, then these are some things you can say. And I want to underline, then it's really tricky if you're going to go forward and tell them how wrong the whole group is and how terrible their tone is. You're looking for a fight there, and you're outnumbered, and it could go quite badly. I'm not saying never do it, but be prepared that this is not going to go well. And so this point is about how do I, in some situations, say that I am not with the consensus here, but without elaborating. And the last one, a general comment. I have a colleague who says that the following phrase fits almost every situation. I think it's more complicated than that. Okay, that it seems like people are saying there is a simple solution and here's what it is. And just for the record, I think it's a lot more complicated. Okay, and then you could basically stop or let people go on or whatever, but you have done your little intervention, if you will, without getting into a big fight. So a couple more skills for exiting a conversation. And one of the things I'm proud about with Braver Angels is that we acknowledge that conversations can go badly. They can be distressing, upsetting, and our skills are not just about how to connect and in this sort of a caring, collaborative way. It's also how do you get out of Dodge? How do you put boundaries up when this is not going well or you're feeling quite bothered by how people are treating you? And so the first point here is be ready to end at any point. If you are the only one in a group, or it's you and one other person, and they're on a roll, be ready, and you choose to engage, be ready to end at any point. Be ready to pull the plug on your participation at any point. And that point I'm suggesting ought to be before escalation occurs, or you're noting escalation. You're noting that you are starting to interrupt people or they're interrupting you. So be ready to end at any point. Now, let me make an observation here. So maybe your family handles the political minority splendidly, maybe your social group, maybe your work group. So I'm presenting situations here where these are difficult, tense conversations. And so if you're fortunate enough to be in situations where you're the political minority and everybody's open to what you say, then God bless everybody. That's not what I'm dealing with here. You don't need this. But if you're in these other situations, you do. So be ready to end. Noting the differences that are happening and then suggesting a stop. So I get that others see this very differently than I do, and that's okay with me. Shall we move on? What that does, it's an attempt to bracket a conversation that you just had. I tend to not like, let's agree to disagree. You can use that if you like. I tend not to like that because it's telling people that what they should agree to. So that's why I don't tend to use it. But this is a version of it. So I get that others see this differently. That's okay with me. Shall we move on? So it's suggesting bringing closure to the conversation, or at least to your part of the conversation. You can't make them shut up with each other. I get that others, are differing from me on this. It's okay. Shall we move on? Okay. And it's inviting people to move on. There's a good chance somebody in the group would like to move on. Okay. And it gives them an opener to say, yeah, let's change the topic or whatever. Now, if you're pressed in a non-constructive way, so the first one is the nice, I'm from Minnesota. It's a nice, Minnesota nice way to say, I don't want to keep going. If they stay after you, then end the conversation. So I've said, I don't want to continue to discuss this and I'm done. So could you pass the water? Okay. So that's a firmer. I've said, I'm done with the conversation. The thing is, somebody will likely say, the most agitated or anxious person or whatever, or your sibling who always thought, you thought you were the smarter one. Somebody's likely to keep at you on that. So I don't know why. I don't know why you don't discuss this. We're just having a calm, rational discussion around here. Okay. Do not pick the bait up and say, you consider this calm and rational? Not in my world. You just picked it up. You just took the bait. Okay. So once you are saying you're done, you have to be done no matter what anybody else says. Pass the water. You just do it non-verbally, whatever. Just don't engage, even if somebody is provocative. Don't engage. If they keep at it, then you go to the last point. You exit the space with a neutral statement such as, I'm going to get some fresh air, or I think you can see I'm into the football these days. I think the Vikings game has started, and I'm going to go see it. You exit the space, and I want to emphasize this last one for being in a group. No parting shots or drama. If you say, so I'm going to go watch the game, which I think will be those, even though those players are opponents, they treat each other a lot better than people around here do. Great line. You can tell your friends you had this great shot at the end, but you have just thrown a hand grenade as you walk out the door. So exit neutrally, no drama, because in a group, and I'm really referring to ongoing groups. I'm not talking about groups of strangers here. I'm talking about groups where there's going to be another day and another conversation, and people will remember not how they baited you. They're going to remember your meltdown. Okay, you're going to pay a price for that, and so you don't want to do that. So finally, and then we'll move to some questions. A prevention strategy. Because if this is happening over and over, one prevention strategy is if there's a ringleader in the group, somebody who kind of leads the charge, with against you or trying to bring you in when you don't want to get in, try to engage that person one-to-one at a separate time, another time, and use your braver angel skills. A lot of times people are at their worst in a group. They're worst in a group. And if you can engage them one-to-one, you bring out their better angels. I remember my daughter when she was in junior high saying once to her mother who reported to me, you know, one-to-one boys are usually very nice, but in a group, that was quite an interesting observation. Okay. Um, and so seek out somebody and just, just say, I'm curious about whatever, or get to know their thoughts, use your skills, use your listening skills, find something to agree with, your perspective statements, the I statements, all the stuff that we teach. And then if it goes okay, you could note, I really enjoyed this conversation about immigration or about Trump or whatever. I enjoyed this conversation a lot more than I did when we did it with the whole family. There's a good chance that that person will say back to you, yeah, there's some pretty annoying people in this family. Okay. They're likely to join with you that things don't always go well in the group. And you may have just had an ally, and you may have helped them decide not to go after you that way. So, as I finish up and we'll go to questions, I realize that I'm assuming that you live in the world of groups that I live in. Okay, and I want to say, if I sound cynical, it's not that I don't love all these people I'm with, but families are difficult. The further out you go, extended families, work groups can be hard, and so this was a conversation about when things are tense and tough, how do you manage yourself? The two summaries are: decide if you want to participate or not. If you're not, but you want to stay, kind of try to manage your reactivity to people, try to be curious, try to learn something, or zone out. Don't let yourself get baited into a conversation you do not want to have. And if you're having the conversation, do not get into escalation, because it's on you partly if you escalate. And so be willing to define, this is where I am. I'm the token liberal conservative, and say where you are, and then let it go. Do not expect people to change their minds, and be ready to exit at any point in a calm way, and seek out some one-to-one conversations. So that's a little summary. And so, Mary Beth, back to you.
We've got about 20 minutes for you to ask questions to Bill. So first up, we have Tim Earl Schurer, and then we'll have Andrea Schiffman after Tim.
All right, thank you. So, Bill, this is the second time I've listened to you, and something really struck me this time that I don't remember picking up last time. And it's something that I've really been trying to do, and that is to avoid the word you or contractions of you, like y'all, your, you are, you guys, you people, except unless you're making a compliment, unless you're complimenting someone, don't say you. So it's really a good principle, and it's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
So I was also trying to avoid the use of the word I, but I think, today you were kind of talking about I, and I kind of says, well, this is me. It's okay to say I, because this is what I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was, when you were talking about, I'm comfortable with boys, but not in a group, it reminded me of the movie Grease. When he shows up, goes, Sandy, and his voice changes and everything.
Yeah.
And the boys in a group, they're just like, oh, yeah, so yeah, there is something about group dynamics. So what I try to do to cut that off is I just try to, I've noticed you do this, and I just want to point it out. I use the word others, you use the word others, or some see it differently, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for those observations. Yeah, I'll
okay, yeah,
take the first one of the you, because if you're in the minority in a group, it's very tempting to say you all. Okay, you guys are doing this, and that puts them all like they're just one person,
defensive, yeah,
defensive. So you're really avoiding it. Yeah. So thank you for highlighting those.
Yep.
Okay.
And I encourage people to try it, because it's a good thing to say, but it's more, you did it very well today, I might say.
Well, that's because I'm
you,
not.
that's a compliment.
That's right. That's because I'm not with my family. And so it takes
Yeah.
practice. So thank you, Tim. We'll move on now. Yeah.
Okay.
Next up is Andrea Schiffman, and after Andrea will be Kate O'Connell. So go ahead and unmute.
Okay. So now we have the spotlighting. Hi, Andrea.
Hey, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for these great tips. So, God, I have a number of things, but I guess most most
A
important.
highlight, Andrea. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, the one thing that really gets, well, let me ask a very quick neutral thing. Whenever I'm a Democrat, and whenever I'm talking about the other side, I feel like I'm insulting if I say it, and I'm not. I want to say, well, Trump supporters or Republicans. And is it just in my mind, or is there another way to say it? Because I feel like I'm being offensive, but whereas I'm not.
Well, the question is who you're talking to, right? If you're talking to a Trump supporter and you
Yeah,
say, well, Trump supporters are this or that,
yeah,
then you're in trouble because there's this person in front of you and they don't represent all of Trump's supporters. The same thing
right.
with, so, I think, so the direct conversation, it's best not to generalize.
So what would I? Oh, so not even make a statement that I was going to make,
Well, try it. Oh, do you have an example now? Yeah,
oh,
like Trump supporters are,
well, Trump supporters tend to believe that everything, the economy, everything is
okay,
depend.
thank you for that. So my input is to avoid that because there are very many reasons why people support Donald Trump and oppose him. And it's really a generalization. The only generalization you can make is they voted for him. Okay. Beyond that, it tends to stereotype people into categories that each side conveniently does of the other side. So I would avoid that. And
Okay,
particularly in a group because you're going to inflame people because not everybody, somebody, well, I don't see it that way and I voted for Trump, and then you're really in trouble.
okay. So don't even approach that. Okay.
Sorry
Um,
about that. So I think if it's okay, we'll move on. Sorry, I told you don't do it. But it's just best, I think, to avoid those generalizations, particularly around people who are part of that group.
okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Right, next up, we have Kate O'Connell, and after that, it will be Michael Engelhart, followed by Lori Weber Taft.
Hello, Kate.
Hi, Bill. Thanks so much. Thanks to everybody who's here. It's interesting because I have been somebody who has been in my family the minority, and I've chosen to stay silent. And that choice has weighed very heavily on me over the years. I feel like I have been complicit in a lot of hate-filled, what to
Yeah,
me feels like hate-filled speech.
yeah.
So what I just love that you gave different examples that said, and I don't have to get into a fight.
Yeah.
One thing that, I was thinking what I could say is, I know we all love each other, and that means everything to me. And I have to tell you, I have a different perspective,
Mhm.
and if people are really willing to talk about it in a way that's not fighting, which I kind of doubt, then I could talk there. But my guess is it would really more result in maybe having follow-up conversations on a one-on-one basis.
Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful.
But yeah, because the silent thing to me is there's a huge cost for me to pay for
Yeah.
not speaking up.
Yeah, over time, and particularly the issues where you feel like there's a group being stereotyped,
Mhm.
and speech that isn't about policy speech or something. It's, there's, and again, groups do that. And by the way, blues do it as well as reds. Okay, so it's equal opportunity. A group gets into overdrive, and then somebody says, well, all those people and they just want this, or they're weird, or they're blah blah blah, and then not everybody necessarily agrees with the whole piece, but they don't say anything. And then if you feel like, man, I'm sort of compromising myself, over time. Then the artist to say, I'm just for the record, I'm not with you on this. Okay. And I know some folks who this doesn't apply to, and I just wanted to say that. You notice what I'm doing now? I just wanted to say it. Okay. I'm not asking for anybody to recant. I'm not telling them they're bad people, but with I statements, I'm saying, I don't see it this way. Okay. And then some people may come up to you afterwards and say more. So that's the fine line. What a lot of people do is they hold it in, and then they blast everybody. Okay. And that's what makes this country wrong. And then you're doing drama, right? And then you're the one that pays the price. So I'm glad you picked up on that. How do you, with good boundaries, not attacks, say, I'm dissenting here. Okay.
Yep. And Bill, I just want to say what you just said was really important, because that means I have to be listening to myself and not be holding it in and clenching.
Yeah.
Instead, just say it neutrally, calmly, but let my voice speak and then just be done.
And
Thank
rehearse it, because if this is going on over and over, Kate, it's the only thing I say about families, very predictable, not your first rodeo. So practice it.
you.
Okay.
You're right.
And
You're
then
right.
and the moment occurs where your heart isn't racing, and then you say it.
Yes, that's why this is so important today. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
All right, next up is Michael Engelhart, followed by Lori Weber Taft.
Hi,
Hello, Michael.
Bill. Oh, yeah, and you see, I'm a Liz Cheney Republican, so I'm outnumbered in every group now, now these days. But I used to do something I used to do here because I teach political science, or I retired just now. I've been teaching political science at Luther, and sometimes I used to hear colleagues say things I thought were out of line, of course, and I'm real good at shutting up.
Mhm.
Okay. But like sometimes I would shoot them an email after.
Okay.
Once email was invented, I started shooting an email. So, well, you ought to consider this
Yeah.
or that or something.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good idea?
I do. Maybe I'll add that to my presentation on this. Just as I talked about seeking somebody out who might be a ringleader, it can be helpful, particularly I'm a recently retired faculty member too. I know how those meetings and those groups can be. And it can be kind of risky to speak up in that group, but to communicate directly to somebody afterwards, I think, and I like to do it not through emails or something, but on the phone or in person, so that you have made your voice known, being very clear not to be criticizing them. So, for example, a lot of the worst stuff that people say in groups are stereotypes. And here you're talking about political science. They know better. They know better. There isn't just one group of whatever. Okay, and so you could seek out somebody individually and say, I don't know how you felt about that conversation. For me, it kind of got into stereotyping whole groups of people who I see as more complicated, and then see where you go. So thank you. You're the lone wolf everywhere, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Next,
you.
Lori Weber Taft, and then we're watching the time. After that will be Robert Scheidler.
Okay, Lori, you have to get yourself unmuted, and then we're ready. There we go.
Okay, hi.
Hi there.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to make a comment on what Andrea had said, and I was wondering if she's wanting to make a point about what she thinks that some Trump followers adhere to, she could just say that. Like, I've heard that a lot of Trump followers believe this, or some Trump followers, this is what I think, and then it's getting around that idea of them being a monolith.
Yeah, that's
So I
good.
just wanted to say that if you think that would be, if
Yeah, I
she's
think
trying
that's
to
good.
raise a point in
Yeah.
that way, she could just do that.
Sure. Yeah,
So
like my understanding is that there's some folks who support him for this reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
I statement, right?
Yeah, and
And the
I've heard, I think, or my understanding is,
and
that
that's
could be better.
some are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some
That's good.
instead of like Trump supporters,
Right,
some.
there
I
you go.
started out thinking you could say a lot, but even that could sound kind of just some
yeah,
people.
some.
Yeah.
Right. Good.
So my question was about, I don't know if you could speak a little more to how to deal with ourselves when we kind of, it's so easy to so quickly get emotionally hijacked
Yeah, yeah,
ourselves. And I've
yeah,
experienced it where I think I'm going to be curious and I very quickly go into not being curious and
yeah,
just, and even afterwards, you know, or if I don't say anything or, you know, don't give my full argument, just feeling really awful afterwards. And I
uh,
don't know if you have any ideas about how to mitigate that. You said something about breathing, and I don't know if there's more on that, but
yeah, yeah. It's well, we're not always able to be open and curious, right? So that's
mhm,
part of why we have to give ourselves permission not to engage. And if you feel that you didn't have a chance or won't have a chance to flesh out your view, then sometimes it's better not to start, right? If there's somebody in the group who's just going to jump down your throat the minute you say something, then so give ourselves permission. But the other thing I'd say is that um, I found it best to go into certain conversations before they start to position myself in a
mhm,
way that I want to learn some stuff here,
yeah,
or I'm going to be thinking about something. In other words, to prepare, because a lot of times what happens is we get reactive in the moment. And so let's say if you're a blue and you go crazy with people who say the 2020 election was stolen. And so somebody says it was completely stolen and okay. Well, if you can tell yourself lots of Reds, not all, but lots of Reds feel that election was stolen. And maybe and then I'm not surprised or shocked and stunned. And maybe I actually learned something, or I'll respond more neutrally, as
mhm,
opposed to each time getting activated anew, like, Lucy and Charlie Brown, right? With the football, over
yeah.
time, Charlie Brown each year would trust her. So I've learned going into these conversations prepare myself, and then I'm less apt to get reactive.
I think it may also be that you're expanding the definition of what it means to handle those conversations well. Because I think a lot of us feel like, well, handling it well would be going in and saying, you know, like,
Yeah.
and coming up with great, you know, and changing everybody's minds or making all those other people feel stupid or, you know, and so sometimes handling it well is just, you know,
Victory.
maybe, being able to gracefully exit or being able to hold
Right.
your peace or,
Yeah.
and kind of giving ourselves a pat on the back when we've been able to do that in a really difficult situation.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
because
Knowing what's feasible, like that line about, I think it's more complicated, and
yeah,
we don't have to get into it now. Well,
yeah.
I just said something important, or I've said, I think, that's one possible solution. I think there may be a whole other uh, group of solutions. And then I read the room. And if
Mhm,
nobody gives a rip about my other solutions, then it's okay. But I've said something. I've
mhm.
said something that isn't asking them to change, but it's making a point. And then what I've learned is sometimes somebody comes up to me afterwards and says, "Well, what did you think about blah blah blah?" So lowering the bar is,
Mhm.
is really what you're saying that I'm.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Robert Scheidler. Remember to unmute, please. And then Terry Howery.
Okay. Hello, Robert.
Yeah, hi. I'm a debate chair, and
Okay.
a couple of times in groups, when they started getting escalated, I told them, that I'm, about Braver Angels debates and why, and how it lowers the temperature. And I thought I'd throw this out. It's not easy to do when people are getting into it, they're not used to it. And so kind of a modified debate chair it became, and it works if people are willing to do it. Now, you'll have a lot of resistance, and especially people that are very defensive, the idea of having it's almost insulting to them to have to go through the chair.
Yeah. So in other words, you're proposing in some groups, sort of suggesting that maybe we could try the Brave Angels debate approach here. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Whoa,
And
that's pretty brave.
well, I've done it twice successfully.
Okay. Okay. With what
But
kind of groups? Family, social group?
no, it's a group that meets together. It's various individuals,
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
and so
There
a
you go.
lot of them know each other.
Yeah.
but in the last elections,
Yeah, yeah,
energy showed up. The
right,
other
right.
thing is like in families, if you talk about it ahead of time and train people in debate, then and then have set it up as a norm that when things get contentious, that we go into Braver Angels debate. I
Well,
just thought I'd throw that out.
I'd love to see a family who could ever pull that off, because if anybody who suggests norms for discussion in families, that's seen as a power move. You're trying to take over, so families are their own group. Now, what I do sometimes in a family and other groups is to say something like, well, I've been involved in this Braver Angels thing, and so for the moment, I'm going to put on that Braver Angels hat, if that's okay with folks. And then that's sort of the preface for my maybe saying, I'm hearing some truth on both sides of this, or something like that. Okay. So it's possible to do that, but I would stay away from, with most families on the planet, suggesting we use these new ground rules, my ground rules.
Oh, no, 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 it can't
Okay.
go that way. But part of the education that goes with it is number one, when we're really curious and we ask questions to the third person, not directly,
Yeah.
it's impossible to be angry at the same time.
No, I agree with you. I agree.
And so
So,
when I explain that, and then I explain that, uh,
so Robert, I need to move on. I love our debate approach, and I applaud you for trying with your friendship group, because it could work. I'm just saying with families, I think it would be. I wouldn't recommend that, to try that with families, but I
I
love your.
actually agree with you. I just thought it would be interesting to bring it up just as something to explore. And
Yeah,
yeah, because it is hard.
it is hard, but I'm glad you're doing it with your group. So thank you. Okay.
Next up is Terry Howray, and then we'll see if we have time for any more after that.
Okay. Hey,
Yeah,
Terry.
thanks, Bill. It's been great. Using that word, I'm curious, has been really helpful in a lot of the discussions that I've been in. And I'm really kind of sensitive when I go back to my family because most of them kind of live together in that general area, right? So what I found myself doing a lot of time is making this presumption that they're all on board with that person that's talking or that group. And I'm just kind of wondering, is there a trap by saying, I'm curious about how the rest of you feel?
Oh
Is
yeah.
that a trap? I mean, is that something that,
Yeah, I don't think I do that. Because the rest of them might, if it's a bunch of people, there's nuances of how they all feel. Maybe I'd ask one person, but even that could put them on the spot. So yeah, it's a great point that we should, particularly if they are more clustered, right? And I'm coming from the outside, it's easy to assume more commonality than is there. So but I'd also be hesitant to ask each person individually to say something without knowing what the family dynamics are, because they could seem as disloyal to the person who is the expert on that. Very, very tricky stuff.
so that would be something again that you would kind of take it aside and say, is this where you are with the family?
Yeah,
Again,
yeah, I'm
back to the
curious.
one to
Yeah,
one
yeah,
on one.
yeah. We had this conversation the other day, and I wasn't sure whether everybody actually, where everybody was. So where are you? So I think that would be the way to go. Yeah.
Well, one last thing, Bill, is this presentation going to be posted somewhere? Or are you going to be publishing it or?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Mary Beth will talk about that. It's
All right. Thank
so
you.
thank you. I guess we're done. Mary
Yeah.
Beth, back to you.
All right. Well, we have another workshop we want to make sure that you have on the radar for tomorrow. Our Skills for Disagreeing Better workshop is being offered tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and it's a 90-minute workshop. If you'd like some additional support, and Paige is putting the link to that into our chat. And we would like to invite you to put into chat maybe a couple words or a sentence about what you're taking away after this session today. So we've got the chat opened up for you to comment. Back to you, Bill.
Well, I just want to say how much I really love the interaction time that we're doing with this. Because I love our one-to-one conversations. I learn stuff. It's great to engage with people. When I present, it's fun to present particularly new material, which was today, but I particularly valued the engagement that we had with folks here today.
Thank you all. I'm going to leave the chat up for just another minute or so to capture more comments, and we'll look forward to seeing you at a future event.
All right. So good to be with you all, and happy holidays, everybody.